Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Valiant. He was looking at the stars through the wide windows. It was a quiet day in space, the kind of day he liked. No problems, no emergencies, just the gentle hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of computers. Jake had been in space for 20 years now. He knew every sound his ship made. He knew when something was wrong just by listening. His second officer, Lieutenant Emma Collins, sat at the communication station. She was young, only 26, but she was good at her job. She could hear signals that other people missed. Today, she was listening to the usual chatter between ships and stations. Nothing interesting, nothing important. Then her screen lit up with red warnings. Emma's hands moved quickly over her controls. Her face went pale. Jake saw her expression and walked over to her station. "What is it?" he asked. Emma looked up at him. Her eyes were wide. "Commander, I'm getting a distress signal. It's coming from the Lyrian colony on Kepler 442b. The signal is breaking up, but I can hear weapons fire in the background." Jake felt his stomach tighten. The Lyrians were humanity's friends. They were a peaceful species that looked like large insects. They had pretty wings that shimmered with colors. They were scientists and artists. They had helped humans learn about the galaxy when humanity first left Earth. They had been kind and patient with the strange newcomers from the dangerous world. "Put it through," Jake ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life. A voice came through, high-pitched and scared. It was Elder Zira, one of the Lyrian leaders Jake had met before. She was speaking fast, her words tumbling over each other. "This is Elder Zira of the Kepler colony. We are under attack. The Krell came without warning. Our shields are failing. They are bombing our cities. So many are dead already. Please, someone help us. They are killing everyone. The children. Oh, stars, they are killing the children." The voice cut off suddenly. The bridge was silent. Every person there had stopped what they were doing. They all stared at the speakers like they could make the voice come back. Jake's hands clenched into fists. The Krell. He knew about them. Everyone in space knew about the Krell. They were raiders and killers. They were tall and strong, with scales like reptiles and teeth like knives. They believed that strong people should take what they wanted from weak people. They had been raiding peaceful colonies for years. The Galactic Council had complained about them, but never did anything real to stop them. But attacking the Lyrians was different. The Lyrians were protected by the Council. This was not just a raid, this was war. "Get me Earth Command right now," Jake said. His voice was hard and cold. "And send out an emergency alert to every human ship in this area. We are going to help them." Emma looked worried. "Sir, the regulations say we have to wait for permission from the Council before we can attack anyone." Jake turned to look at her. His eyes were like ice. "Emma, those regulations were written by people who have never had to fight for their lives. The Lyrians are dying right now while we talk. Send the alert. Humanity does not leave friends behind." Emma nodded and started working. Within minutes, the message went out across all human communication channels. Every human ship, station, and colony received the news. The Lyrians, who had been so kind to humanity, were being murdered. They had called for help. On Earth, in the big government buildings, leaders gathered for an emergency meeting. They watched videos from the Lyrian colony. They saw the smoke rising from burning cities. They saw Krell ships in orbit, firing down at the helpless people below. They saw bodies in the streets. The vote was quick. Every single person voted yes. Humanity would go to war. Admiral Peter Griffin was in charge of Earth's military. He was an old man with gray hair and a face full of scars. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion 15 years ago. He knew what war meant. He knew what it cost. But he also knew that some things were worth fighting for. He stood before the cameras and gave the order that would change everything. All human ships are ordered to go to Kepler 442b immediately. This is authorization code Broken Arrow. This is not a drill. We are going to war. Humanity will not stand by while our friends are murdered. The message spread like fire. On colony worlds across human space, people heard the news. Merchant ship captains changed course and headed for Kepler 442b. Exploration vessels that had been mapping distant stars turned around. Mining ships that had been pulling ore from asteroids shut down their operations and joined the fleet. On Earth itself, the shipyards went into full activity. The war fleet began to launch. These were special ships that humanity had built in secret. After humans first met aliens, they realized how vulnerable they were. Other species had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of Earth's. So, humanity had built weapons in secret, just in case. They had hoped never to use them. But now the time had come. The ships were different from the normal exploration vessels. They were covered in armor. They had huge guns. They had missile tubes and railguns and weapons that other species had never seen before. Because humans came from Earth, a world so dangerous that most aliens could not believe intelligent life had evolved there. And humans had spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other. They were very, very good at it. Back on the Valiant, Jake watched as more ships arrived. First there were dozens, then hundreds. Military cruisers flew alongside civilian freighters that had been quickly fitted with weapons. Personal yachts flew next to massive colony ships. Rich and poor, military and civilian, they all came together. The Galactic Council building was enormous. It floated in space above the planet Centralis, a beautiful world with blue oceans and green forests. Inside the main chamber, representatives from 300 different species gathered for an emergency meeting. They were all talking at once, their voices filling the room with noise. Ambassador Vrix of the Tellurian Consortium was angry. He was a large creature that looked like a squid, with tentacles that waved in the air when he was upset. Right now, his tentacles were moving very fast. He pointed one of them at the human ambassador. "This is completely unacceptable," he shouted. "The humans have sent their entire military without asking the council first. This breaks every rule we have. They must be ordered to stop immediately." Ambassador Sophie Grant stood calmly in her place. She was a small woman compared to most of the aliens in the room, but she did not look scared. She had short brown hair and steady eyes. She had been chosen as Earth's representative because she was smart and because she did not back down when things got difficult. "Ambassador Vrix," she said in a clear voice, "the council has been talking for 3 days while our friends are being killed. Humanity will not wait around while innocent people die just so we can follow proper procedure. Our ships are already on their way. Nothing will stop them." Vrix's tentacles writhed faster. "You cannot just declare war without permission. There are rules. There are steps we must follow. The council must study the situation, form committees, discuss proper responses." "Discuss what?" Sophie interrupted. Her calm voice now had an edge to it. "The Krell are committing genocide right now. What is there to discuss? Should we form a committee to decide if murder is wrong? Should we debate how many dead children are acceptable before we act?" The room went quiet. Many of the ambassadors looked uncomfortable. They were not used to such direct talk. In the council, things were done slowly and carefully. Everyone had to agree before action was taken. It could take months or even years to decide on anything. Chancellor Morth raised one of his webbed hands. He was very old, even for his long-lived species. He looked like a large frog, with green skin and big golden eyes. He had been leading the council for 200 years. He had seen many things, but humans still confused him. "Ambassador Grant," he said in his slow, deep voice, "you must understand why we are concerned. Your species has powerful weapons. Weapons that frighten many of us. We have worked very hard to keep peace in the galaxy. When one species takes military action on its own, it threatens that peace." Sophie took a deep breath. She had prepared for this moment. "Chancellor, may I speak honestly?" "Please do." "The species in this council evolved on easy worlds," Sophie began. "Your planets had light gravity, gentle weather, and plenty of food. You did not have to fight to survive every single day. You built your civilization on cooperation, because that was what worked on your worlds, and that is good. That is admirable." She brought up a holographic image that showed the Lyrian colony. Buildings were burning. Bodies lay in the streets. Krell ships circled overhead like vultures. "But humans are different," Sophie continued. "Earth is what you classify as a Class 12 death world. That means it is one of the most dangerous planets where intelligent life has ever evolved. Our gravity is heavier than most species can survive. Our weather includes hurricanes that destroy cities, tornadoes that pick up buildings, and floods that drown entire regions. Our planet has earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, and ice ages. And the animals on Earth are terrifying. We have predators that can run faster than your fastest vehicles. We have creatures in the ocean that can swallow a boat whole. We have insects that can kill with a single sting. Many of the ambassadors shifted nervously. They had heard about Earth, but hearing Sophie describe it made it sound even worse. Humans survived all of that, Sophie said. We survived by being tough. We survived by never giving up. We survived by protecting each other. On Earth, if you abandoned your tribe, your family, your friends, you died. Loyalty was not just a nice idea. It was survival. And that is still part of who we are today. She pointed at the image of the burning colony. These are Lyrians. When humans first came to the galaxy, we were scared and confused. Everything was new and strange. But the Lyrians helped us. They taught our children about the stars. They shared their knowledge freely. They treated us with kindness. And now, they are dying. Sophie looked around the room, meeting the eyes of as many ambassadors as she could. The human fleet did not mobilize because of politics or strategy. They mobilized because someone they care about called for help. And humans never, ever ignore that call. It does not matter if it is dangerous. It does not matter what the rules say. When a friend needs help, humans come. That is not something we can change. That is who we are. Ambassador Vrick spoke again, but his voice was quieter now. But the consequences of such actions could be severe. What if other species start taking military action without council approval? What if we return to the old days of constant war? Then perhaps the council needs to change, Sophie said firmly. Perhaps the rules need to be rewritten. Because right now, your rules say that we should wait and talk while children are murdered. And humans will never accept that. We would rather be expelled from the council than abandon our principles. The chamber erupted with noise. Some species were shouting their support for humanity. Others were demanding that humans be punished. Still others sat quietly, thinking about what Sophie had said. Then someone activated the large viewing screen that covered one wall of the chamber. It showed the space near Kepler 442b. And there, dropping out of hyperspace, was the human fleet. Everyone stopped talking. They stared at the screen. There were hundreds of ships. Big warships bristling with weapons, small fast attack craft, even civilian vessels that had been modified to carry weapons. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. They moved with purpose and determination. Captain Linda Hayes commanded one of those ships, the Earth defense ship Thunderbolt. She was a veteran warrior with scars on her face and gray in her hair. She had fought in every conflict humanity had faced since leaving Earth. Now she stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display. "Status report," she ordered. Her tactical officer, a young man named Greg Patterson, worked his controls quickly. "Captain, I count 47 Krell warships in orbit around the planet. They are firing at the surface. The colony's shields are almost gone. I am also detecting biological weapons. They are trying to wipe out the Lyrians completely." Linda felt cold rage fill her chest. Biological weapons. That meant disease and poison. That meant slow, horrible deaths. The Krell were not just attacking. They were trying to destroy an entire species. "How long until we can shoot at them?" she asked. 14 minutes at our current speed." Linda opened a channel to all the human ships. "All vessels, this is Thunderbolt. We are going in fast and hard. Alpha Wing, you are with me. We will hit them from the front. Beta Wing, go around to the left and attack their flank. Gamma Wing, protect the colony. Civilian ships, stay behind us and get War Leader Krax stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bloodfang. He was enormous, even for a Krell. He stood 7 feet tall, covered in dark green scales that were harder than most armor. His teeth were like daggers, and his claws could tear through metal. He had been raiding weak species for 30 years. He had destroyed dozens of colonies. He had killed thousands, and he had never lost a battle. Below his ship, the Lyrian colony burned. Krax watched the fires with satisfaction. The insect creatures had begged for mercy. They had cried and pleaded. That made it even better. Krax believed that the universe belonged to the strong. The weak deserved to suffer. War leader, one of his officers called out, "We are detecting hyperspace signatures. Many ships are arriving." Krax turned his massive head. "How many?" "More than 500, war leader." Krax felt surprised for a moment. The Council did not have that many military ships. "Who are they?" "The identification codes say they are human vessels, war leader." Krax began to laugh. It was a harsh, barking sound. He had heard of humans. They were a new species in the galaxy. They were small and weak. Their bones broke easily. They could not survive in most environments without special suits. They were obsessed with foolish ideas like friendship and honor. They were pathetic. "How many of those are warships?" he asked. "About 200, war leader. The rest appear to be civilian vessels." Krax laughed even harder. "They brought merchants to a battle? These humans are stupider than I thought. Prepare all weapons. We will destroy them quickly, then continue with the colony." But as the human fleet got closer, Krax stopped laughing. The ships were moving fast, too fast. They were burning their engines at levels that should have been dangerous. They were not following the usual rules of space combat. They were not trying to talk. They were not broadcasting warnings. They were just coming, like a wave of destruction. Then Krax's communication screen activated. A human female appeared. She was small, with short dark hair and cold eyes. She wore a military uniform with marks that showed she was a captain. "Krell vessels," she said in a hard voice. "This is Captain Linda Hayes of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are attacking a species that is protected by the Council. You have 30 seconds to stop firing, leave orbit, and surrender. This is your only warning." Krax felt his blood boil with rage. This tiny creature dared to threaten him. He was Krax the Destroyer. He had conquered entire worlds. "Human," he snarled, "you have no power here. Leave now, or I will kill you just like I am killing these insects." The human's face did not change. Her eyes stayed cold. "You were warned. Remember that in the moments before you die." The screen went dark. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the human fleet opened fire. Krax had fought many battles in his life. He understood war. He knew how civilized species fought. They would position their ships carefully. They would trade shots at long range. They would target specific systems to disable ships without killing crews. They would offer chances to surrender. That was how war was supposed to work. But humans did not fight like that. The human ships came in like sharks smelling blood. They accelerated to speeds that seemed impossible. Their engines burned so hot that Krax could see the heat trails even in the vacuum of space. They did not try to disable Krell ships. They tried to destroy them. The weapons were brutal. Most species used elegant energy beams that could be precisely aimed. Humans used railguns that fired solid metal at incredible speeds. They used missiles that came in swarms. They used weapons that Krax had never seen before, weapons that tore through shields like they were not even there. And they did not target weapons or engines like civilized species did. They targeted life support systems. They targeted command centers. They targeted reactor cores. They were trying to kill everyone on board. The Bloodfang shook as 3 human cruisers concentrated their fire on it. Krax's shields, which had never failed before, collapsed in seconds. "Return fire," he roared. "Destroy them." His crew tried. The Bloodfang's weapons fired back, and some human ships took damage. But the humans kept coming. For every ship that fell back, 2 more took its place. They moved in perfect coordination, like they had practiced this attack 1,000 times. Krax realized with growing horror that the humans had studied the Krell. They knew Krell tactics. They knew Krell weaknesses. They had planned this battle before it even started. And worst of all, they were not trying to win by forcing surrender. They were trying to win by killing everyone. On the Thunderbolt, Captain Linda Hayes watched the tactical display with grim focus. Around her, the bridge crew worked efficiently. No one panicked. No one hesitated. They had trained for this. "Target the flagship's main reactor," Linda ordered. All weapons, fire! The Thunderbolt's railguns fired. Solid tungsten rounds, each weighing several tons, shot through space faster than bullets. They hit the Bloodfang's hull and punched straight through. The Krell ship's reactor was breached. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the flagship exploded in a brilliant ball of fire. Flagship destroyed, Greg reported. The Krell fleet is breaking formation. Linda nodded. Without their leader, the Krell would be confused. That was good. But she felt no pleasure in the killing. She had seen too much death in her life to enjoy it. This was just something that needed to be done. Around the battlefield, the story repeated itself. Human ships proved to be devastating against enemies who had never faced total war. The Krell fought bravely. They were warriors by culture and training. But bravery was not enough against an enemy that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing. Captain Ryan Cooper commanded the destroyer Tempest. His ship had been damaged before the battle even started. It had been in dock for repairs when the call came. The engines were running at only 70% power. The maneuvering thrusters were not working properly. But Ryan had launched anyway. When friends called for help, you came. It did not matter if your ship was ready or not. Now he faced a problem. A Krell-heavy cruiser had broken through the human lines. It was heading straight for the civilian evacuation ships. Those ships were filled with volunteers who had come to rescue survivors. They had no weapons, no armor. If the Krell cruiser reached them, hundreds of humans would die. Ryan looked at his tactical display. His ship could not outrun the Krell cruiser. His weapons were not strong enough to stop it. But he could do one thing. Lieutenant Karen Price, he said to his second officer, I need you to listen carefully. In a few minutes, I want you to get to the escape pods. Take the crew with you. Karen stared at him. Sir, what are you planning? Ryan smiled. It was a sad smile, but also somehow peaceful. The Tempest might not be able to shoot that cruiser, but we can still stop it. Transfer all power to the engines. Set course to intercept. Ram speed. Sir, no. If we ram them at that speed, we'll be destroyed. I know, Ryan said calmly. That's why you need to get the crew to the pods. You have 2 minutes. The Battle of Kepler 442b lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the sky above the colony was clear of Krell ships. Every single one of the 47 enemy warships had been destroyed. Not one survived. Not one escaped. The human fleet had made sure of that. But victory had not come without cost. 32 human ships were destroyed. 4,000 humans were dead. Some had died when their ships exploded. Some had died from wounds. Some, like Captain Ryan Cooper, had sacrificed themselves to save others. Each death left families and friends grieving across human space. On the colony below, Elder Zira emerged from the underground shelter where she had hidden with the other survivors. She walked through her city and wanted to cry. Beautiful buildings that had taken generations to build were now piles of rubble. The parks where children had played were filled with craters. Bodies lay everywhere, covered with dust and ash. 40% of the colony's population was dead. 12,000 Lyrians, fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, artists who would never create another painting, scientists who would never make another discovery, children who would never grow up. All dead because the Krell had decided to attack. But the survivors were alive, and they were alive because humans had come. A human landing craft descended from the sky and touched down in the central square. The door opened and Commander Jake Morrison stepped out. He looked tired. His uniform was burned and torn. There was a bandage on his head, but he smiled when he saw Zira. Elder, he said gently, we came as fast as we could. I'm so sorry we were not faster. Zira walked up to him. Tears ran down her face, which was something most species never saw. Lyrians did not cry easily. It took great emotion to make them shed tears. She reached out with one of her slender arms and touched Jake's hand. Commander Morrison, your people saved us. We owe you everything. Jake shook his head. You owe us nothing, Elder. This is what friends do. They show up when it matters. Over the next week, the work of recovery began. Human medical teams came down to the planet to treat the wounded. They brought supplies and equipment. They worked day and night to help the injured Lyrians. Human engineers examined the damaged buildings and started making repairs. Human counselors talked to survivors who were traumatized by what they had seen. The civilian ships that had come with the war fleet proved their worth. They brought food, medicine, tools, and everything else needed for recovery. Volunteers worked alongside Lyrians to clear rubble and rebuild homes. Children from human ships played with Lyrian children, helping them smile again despite everything that had happened. But while humans focused on helping their friends, the rest of the galaxy was trying to understand what had just occurred. The Krell Dominion had terrorized civilized space for decades. They had raided hundreds of colonies. They had killed thousands. The Galactic Council had complained and protested, but never took real action. The Krell had seemed unstoppable. And then humans had destroyed them in a single afternoon. On the Council world, Ambassador Sophie Grant found herself in a very different situation than before. Species that had ignored her now wanted to meet with her. Some came to thank humanity for stopping the Krell. Others came because they were afraid. They had seen what human weapons could do. They had seen human determination, and it scared them. Chancellor Morth called Sophie to a private meeting. The old leader looked even more tired than usual. The weight of responsibility seemed to press down on him. "Ambassador Grant," he said slowly, "the Council is very divided right now. Some members think humanity broke all our rules. Others say you saved a member species from being wiped out. I need to know something. What does Earth want?" Sophie met his eyes steadily. "Chancellor, humanity wants what we have always wanted. We want to live in peace. We want to explore the galaxy. We want to build friendships with other species. But we will not give up our principles to have peace. The Krell were committing genocide, and the Council did nothing. If staying in the Council means we have to watch that happen, then maybe membership is not worth having. You would leave the Council? We would rather stand alone with our honor than stand with people who watch genocide and do nothing," Sophie said firmly. "But I hope it does not come to that. I hope the Council can learn from this, that there are times when doing something is more important than following rules. That real peace does not mean avoiding all conflict. It means being willing to fight when you have to." Morth was quiet for a long time. "Your species frightens us, Ambassador. You must understand that. You come from a world that should have killed you, but instead you grew strong. You have weapons that could destroy civilizations, but you use them carefully. You talk about friendship like it is sacred, but you will wage total war to protect those bonds. We do not understand you." Sophie smiled sadly. "Chancellor, honestly, we do not always understand ourselves. Humans are full of contradictions. We can be terribly violent and wonderfully kind. We can be our own worst enemies and our greatest heroes. But there is one thing you can always count on. When humans say we are your friends, we mean it. And when you are in trouble, we will come, no matter what it costs us." On Earth, the funerals had begun. Captain Ryan Cooper was buried with full military honors. His wife Margaret stood with their 2 children at the graveside. She held the folded flag they had given her. Little Danny tried to be brave like his father had been. Baby Sarah did not understand why everyone was sad. Admiral Peter Griffin spoke at the funeral. His voice was rough with emotion. Ryan Cooper understood something important about being human. That some things are worth dying for. That protecting innocent people is not just a job. It is a calling. That sometimes the only way to stop evil is to stand in its way and refuse to move, even if it costs you everything. His sacrifice reminds us why we fight. Not for glory or power, but because someone needed help and we answered. Similar ceremonies happened all across Earth. 4,000 funerals for 4,000 heroes. The whole planet mourned. But the planet also felt pride. Humanity had been tested and had passed the test. On the Lyrian homeworld, their own ceremony took place. Elder Council leader Thrix was the highest authority in Lyrian society. He was very old, even for a Lyrian. His wings had lost their shimmer, and his movements were slow. But his voice was still strong when he made his announcement. "We will build monuments to the humans who died saving us," Thrix declared. "One on every Lyrian world. Their names will be taught to every Lyrian child. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, all Lyrians will observe a moment of silence to honor the friends who gave their lives for us." His voice grew even stronger. Humanity has shown us the true meaning of friendship. They have proven that bonds between species can be stronger than fear or self-interest. We will never forget this, and we make an oath that binds all future generations. If humanity ever calls for our aid, the Lyrian people will answer with everything we have. This is our sacred promise. 3 months passed after the Battle of Kepler 442b. The galaxy had changed during that time. The Galactic Council had spent those months in heated debates. Every day, representatives argued about what to do about humanity. Some wanted to punish humans for taking military action without permission. Others wanted to thank them for stopping the Krell. The arguments went on and on. Finally, Chancellor Morth called for a vote. The chamber was packed with representatives from over 300 species. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Ambassador Sophie Grant stood before them all, ready to defend her species one final time. Morth's voice rang out across the chamber. We are here to decide the future of humanity in the Galactic Council. 3 proposals have been made. First, immediate expulsion from the Council for unauthorized military action. Second, censure and limits on human military power. Third, recognition that humanity's actions were justified and integration of human security methods into Council policy. Sophie took a deep breath. She had spent months talking to individual ambassadors. She had explained human philosophy. She had shown them videos of Earth so they could understand where humans came from. She had argued and debated and negotiated until she was exhausted. Now it all came down to this vote. But before the vote could begin, Ambassador Vrix stood up. Sophie tensed. Vrix had been one of humanity's harshest critics. She expected another attack. But when the Tellurian spoke, his tone was different. I have spent these months studying human history, Vrix said slowly. His tentacles moved gently instead of aggressively. What I learned surprised me. Humans have fought thousands of wars against each other. Wars that killed millions. Wars that destroyed entire regions of their planet. They created weapons so terrible that they almost wiped themselves out. I thought this proved they were dangerous barbarians. He paused, and his large eyes looked directly at Sophie. But I was wrong. Yes, humans fought terrible wars. But when they gained the ability to leave their world, they chose peace. They offered friendship to species that could have been enemies. They shared their technology. They helped others. They honored their promises even when it cost them dearly. Sophie felt her heart beat faster. Was Vrix actually supporting humanity? I opposed the military action because I feared what it represented, Vrix continued. A return to ancient times when the strong did whatever they wanted. But humanity did not attack the Krell for power or territory. They fought because their friends called for help. That is not barbarism. That is the highest form of civilization. Vrix's tentacles spread wide, a gesture of respect in his culture. Therefore, the Tellurian Consortium withdraws all support for punishment of humanity. Instead, we propose something new. We propose that humanity be given a special role in the Council, that they become official protectors, authorized to respond to threats against any Council species, that we finally admit the truth. Peace is precious, but some will only respect strength. And humanity has proven they have both the strength to fight and the wisdom to use it properly. The chamber exploded with noise. Species shouted their opinions. Some agreed with Vrix. Others still wanted to punish humanity. The debate raged for hours, but when the vote finally came, the result was clear. By 237 votes to 68, with 15 abstentions, the Council approved what became known as the Covenant of Protection. Under the new agreement, humanity would maintain a rapid response fleet. This fleet would be authorized to intervene when genocide, war crimes, or attacks on civilians occurred. Other Council species would contribute money and resources to support the fleet. But humans would command it. In exchange, humanity agreed to strict oversight and regular reports to the Council. It was not perfect. Many species remained uncomfortable with giving humans so much military authority. But it was progress. It was recognition that the galaxy had changed, that the old ways of endless debate while people died were no longer acceptable. Commander Jake Morrison was promoted to Admiral. He was given command of the new Council Defense Fleet. His first act as admiral was to visit the Kepler colony. The city had been largely rebuilt with help from dozens of species who had been inspired by humanity's actions. Elder Jira met him at the memorial in the center of the restored city. It was made of black stone and stood 20 feet tall. Carved into the stone were the names of every human who had died in the battle. At the top, written in both English and Lyrian script, were simple words. They heard our call. They came. They gave everything. The children ask about the battle, Jira told Jake as they stood before the memorial. They want to understand why humans did what you did. I tell them what I have learned about your species. That you believe some things are worth dying for. That friendship is not just a word to you, but something sacred. That when you make a promise, you keep it no matter what. Jake reached out and touched the stone. His fingers traced the names of people he had known, people he had served with, people he had called friends. We are not perfect, Elder. We make mistakes. We have flaws. But you are right about one thing. When someone we care about needs help, we come. That is not heroism. That is just who we are. Jira's wings shimmered with emotion. Perhaps those are the same thing. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal. The war fleet came home. Families were reunited. The wounded healed in hospitals. But something fundamental had changed in how humans saw themselves. Captain Linda Hayes, now promoted to Commodore, gave a speech at the Naval Academy. Young cadets filled the auditorium, listening to every word. These were the next generation, the ones who would inherit the responsibility humanity had taken on. For 20 years, we tried to fit into galactic civilization, Linda said. We tried to be like other species. We tried to hide the parts of ourselves that made others uncomfortable. We were ashamed of our violent history and our dangerous world. But Kepler 442b taught us something different. We learned that we do not need to be ashamed of what we are. She looked out at the young faces before her. Yes, we are violent. Yes, we are aggressive. Yes, we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. But those traits, the ones we thought were weaknesses, turned out to be strengths when they were needed most. Our ability to fight, our refusal to give up, our fierce loyalty to friends, these things saved the Lyrians. Linda's voice grew more serious. You are going to inherit a galaxy that is changing. A galaxy that is learning that peace sometimes requires the willingness to fight. That friendship means standing by your allies even when it is dangerous. That some lines cannot be crossed without consequences. This is the doctrine we represent, and the responsibility is enormous. The cadets sat up straighter, feeling the weight of what she was saying. But remember this always, Linda continued. Power without restraint is tyranny. Violence without purpose is evil. We fight not because we love war, but because we love peace enough to defend it. We protect not because we are stronger, but because someone needs to. And we stand with our allies not because we have to, but because that is what friends do. The moment we forget that, the moment we start fighting for any other reason, we become the very evil we opposed. The cadets applauded, but Linda could see in their eyes that they understood. They understood the burden they were accepting. They understood that being humanity's defenders meant being worthy of that trust. In the years that followed, the Council Defense Fleet proved its worth time and again. They stopped pirate raids in the outer regions. They responded to natural disasters, bringing aid to species whose worlds 10 years passed since the Battle of Kepler 442b. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Council Defense Fleet, commanded by humans, had become one of the most respected organizations in civilized space. They had responded to over 200 emergencies. They had saved millions of lives. And they had done it all without once abusing their power or breaking their oath. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unity. The ship was named to represent the bond between all Council species. It was bigger than the Valiant had been, with better weapons and stronger shields. But Jake still missed his old ship sometimes. He missed the simpler days when he was just a commander on patrol. Today was a special day. Jake was returning to Kepler 442b for the 10th anniversary of the battle. The Lyrians had invited him to speak at their memorial ceremony. He looked out at the stars and thought about all the changes he had seen. His second officer, a young woman named Helen Porter, approached him with a datapad. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Lyrian colony. They say preparations are complete for tomorrow's ceremony." Jake nodded. "Thank you, Helen. How long until we arrive?" 3 hours, sir." Jake smiled. Helen reminded him of Emma Collins, who had served with him on the Valiant. Emma was a captain now, commanding her own ship in the defense fleet. Many of the people who had fought at Kepler 442b had gone on to important positions. They were the generation that had proven humanity's worth to the galaxy. When the Unity arrived at Kepler 442b, Jake was amazed by what he saw. The colony had been completely rebuilt. It was even more beautiful than before. The Lyrians had used human architectural techniques combined with their own artistic style. The result was stunning. Buildings that looked like they were made of light and crystal rose toward the sky. Gardens filled with flowers from a dozen worlds surrounded every structure. But what truly surprised Jake was how many ships were in orbit. Hundreds of vessels from dozens of species had come for the anniversary. They came to honor the dead and to celebrate the bond between humanity and the Lyrians. They came to remember the day when the galaxy learned that friendship could be stronger than fear. Jake took a shuttle down to the surface. Elder Zira was waiting for him at the landing pad. She was older now, her wings less bright than they had been. But her spirit was as strong as ever. "Admiral Morrison," she said warmly, "welcome back to Kepler 442b. Thank you for coming." "I would not miss this for anything, Elder," Jake replied. "This place is special to all humans. This is where we proved who we are." They walked together through the city. Everywhere Jake looked, he saw evidence of the bond between humans and Lyrians. Human children played with Lyrian children in the parks. Human scientists worked alongside Lyrian researchers in laboratories. Human artists collaborated with Lyrian painters to create works that combined both cultures. It was everything the Galactic Council was supposed to represent. That evening, the memorial ceremony began. Thousands gathered in the central square. The black stone memorial still stood there, now surrounded by gardens that humans and Lyrians had planted together. Representatives from dozens of species attended, including Chancellor Morth, who had traveled specifically for this occasion. Elder Council Leader Thrix spoke first. He was very old now, but he insisted on speaking. His voice was weak but clear. 10 years ago, we faced extinction. The Krell came to destroy us. We called for help, not knowing if anyone would answer. But humanity heard our call. They came from across their territory. They brought their warships and their courage. They brought their determination and their loyalty. And they saved us. Thrix paused, his emotion evident. 4,000 humans died here. They died far from their homes, fighting for people they barely knew. They died because they believed friendship was worth dying for. We will never forget their sacrifice. We will never forget what humanity taught us that day. Then Jake stepped forward to speak. He looked out at the crowd. He saw humans and Lyrians standing together. He saw representatives from species all across the council. He saw young faces and old faces. He saw hope. 10 years ago, this colony was burning, Jake began. The Krell thought they could destroy the innocent without consequences. They were wrong. Humanity came because the Lyrians were our friends. Because we had made a promise to stand by our allies. Because that is who we are. He gestured to the memorial behind him. These names represent the best of humanity. They represent people who understood that some things are worth fighting for, worth dying for. They came here knowing they might not go home. They came anyway. Jake's voice grew stronger. But this memorial is not just about the past. It is about the future. It is a reminder to all of us, human and alien alike, that we are stronger together. That friendship between species is possible. That we can build a galaxy where the strong protect the weak instead of preying on them. The crowd listened in silence. Even the Tellurian ambassador Vrix, who had once opposed humanity, nodded in agreement. The Council Defense Fleet exists because of what happened here, Jake continued. We have stopped raids, prevented wars, and saved lives across the galaxy. But we could not have done it alone. Other species have supported us. They have trusted us with this responsibility, and we have tried every day to be worthy of that trust. He looked directly at the young people in the crowd. To the next generation, both human and Lyrian and all the others, remember this day. Remember that friendship is not just a nice idea. It is a force that can change the galaxy. When you see injustice, stand against it. When you see someone in need, help them. When your friends call, answer. That is the legacy of Kepler 442b. After the speeches, there was a moment of silence. 4,000 names on the memorial. 4,000 lives given for others. 4,000 families who had lost someone they loved. The silence stretched on, and in that quiet, everyone remembered. Then Lyrian children came forward. They carried candles that they placed around the memorial. It was a Lyrian tradition to honor the dead with light. Soon, thousands of small flames flickered in the darkness. The memorial glowed with their light, and the names seemed to shine. Chancellor Morth approached Jake after the ceremony. The old leader looked thoughtful. Admiral Morrison, I must confess something, Morth said. When humanity first joined the Council, I was uncertain about your species. You were so different from us. You came from a world that seemed impossible. You had such capacity for violence. I worried about what you might become. Jake nodded, understanding. And now, Chancellor? Now I see that I was looking at it wrong, Morth replied. Yes, you have capacity for violence, but you also have capacity for incredible compassion. You could have used your strength to dominate others. Instead, you use it to protect them. You have become what I always hoped the Council could be. You have shown us that different does not mean wrong. That strength and kindness can exist together. Morth placed a webbed hand on Jake's arm. Thank you, Admiral. Thank you for proving that the galaxy can be better than it was. Thank you for showing us a new way forward. Jake felt emotion tighten his throat. Coming from Morth, who had been so cautious about humanity, those words meant everything. But the day was not over. That night, Jake received an urgent message. There was a new crisis. A colony in the outer regions was under attack by raiders. Not the Krell, they were gone. But there were always others willing to prey on the weak. The colony had sent a distress call. Jake immediately ordered the Unity to prepare for departure. Within an hour, they were ready. But before they left, Jake sent a message to all ships in the Council Defense Fleet. This is Admiral Morrison. We have received a distress call. A colony needs our help. All available ships are to rendezvous at the coordinates I am transmitting. We do not know how many enemies we face. We do not know if this will be dangerous, but we know one thing. Someone called for help, and we will answer. That is what we do. That is who we are. Morrison out. As the Unity jumped to hyperspace, Jake looked back one last time at Kepler 442b. The planet was peaceful now. The lights of the city glowed in the darkness. Children slept safely in their beds. And it was all possible because 10 years ago, humans had heard a call and answered it. Across the galaxy, other ships received Jake's message. Human vessels immediately changed course. But so did ships from other species. Lyrian vessels joined the fleet. Tellurian ships came. Even species that had once been suspicious of humanity now answered the call alongside them. Because they had learned the lesson that humanity taught. That when someone needs help, you go. You do not debate. You do not form committees. You do not worry about rules and procedures. You just go. Because that is what friends do. That is what family does. And the Council, for all its differences and debates, was becoming a family. The legacy of Kepler 442b lived on. Not just in memorials and ceremonies, but in actions. In ships that jumped to hyperspace when someone called for help. In soldiers who risked their lives for strangers. In species that had learned to trust each other. Humanity had come to the galaxy as newcomers, uncertain and cautious. They had been judged for their violent history and their dangerous world. But they had proven that where you come from matters less than what you choose to do. They had shown that the capacity for violence, when combined with the wisdom to use it properly and the compassion to protect others, could be a force for good. The call had come 10 years ago. Humanity had answered. And now, whenever a call came from anywhere in the galaxy, humanity still answered. They always would. Because that was the promise they had made. And humans always kept their promises. In the cold darkness of space, the Council Defense Fleet assembled once again. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species united by a common purpose. To protect the innocent, to stand against evil, to prove that the galaxy could be better. And at the head of that fleet, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on his bridge and thought about all the people who had made this possible. The ones who had fought at Kepler 442b. The ones who had died there. The ones who had believed that friendship was worth fighting for. "All ships ready, Admiral," Helen reported. Jake nodded. "Then let's go. Someone needs our help, and we do not keep friends waiting." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving trails of light across the void. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, people looked up at the stars and felt safer. Because they knew that if they ever needed help, if they ever faced darkness, they could make a call. And somewhere in the vast universe, the war fleet of Deathworlders would hear it and come running. Not because they had to, but because that is what friends do. That is who humans are. And that would never change. Had been hit by asteroids or solar storms. They prevented 3 attempted genocides before they could truly begin. They became the shield that protected the weak and the sword that punished the wicked. Other species gradually came to trust the humans. They saw that humans kept their word. They saw that humans did not abuse their power. They saw that humans truly cared about protecting others, not about gaining control. But humanity never forgot the price of that trust. In every ship of the defense fleet, in a place of honor, there was a plaque with the names of those who had fallen at Kepler 442b. And beside those names, a simple phrase that summed up everything humanity stood for. The call came. We answered. We always will. Children across human space grew up learning about the battle. They learned about Captain Ryan Cooper, who sacrificed his ship to save civilians. They learned about the thousands who had died fighting to protect friends. They learned that being human meant more than just existing. It meant standing up for what was right, even when it was hard. Even when it cost everything. The recording of that speech spread across the galaxy. Other species watched it and began to reconsider their opinions about humans. Maybe these Deathworlders were not the barbarians some had feared. Maybe there was wisdom in their strange ideas about loyalty and sacrifice, but not everyone was moved by the speech. In the dark spaces between the stars, other powers watched and calculated. The Krell had been destroyed, but they were not the only dangerous species in the galaxy. And some began to wonder what would happen if humanity faced a threat they could not overcome. Would their determination hold? Or would they break like everyone else when they met something stronger than themselves? Those questions would be answered someday. But for now, the galaxy had learned an important lesson. That the scary creatures from the Death World were not monsters. They were friends. Fierce, loyal friends who would cross the stars to keep their promises. Who would stand against terrible odds to protect the innocent. Who would pay any price to do what was right. And for those species under humanity's protection, that knowledge brought comfort and hope. Karen's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She understood. Sometimes there was no good choice. Sometimes you could only choose between bad and worse. She ran to gather the crew. Ryan sat alone on his bridge as the tempest accelerated. He thought about his wife, Margaret, back on Earth. He thought about his 2 children, little Danny and baby Sarah. He wished he could see them one more time. But if he did nothing, those civilian ships would be destroyed. Hundreds would die. And that was not acceptable. The Krell cruiser tried to evade when it realized what Ryan was doing. But the Tempest's pilot, who had refused to leave the bridge, adjusted course to match. Ryan opened a final channel to his crew in the escape pods. "It has been an honor serving with all of you," he said. "Take care of each other, and tell my family I love them." Then, the Tempest struck the Krell cruiser right at its engineering section. Both ships exploded in a massive fireball. But behind them, the civilian evacuation ships escaped safely. They would live to save the Lyrians, and Ryan Cooper's sacrifice would not be forgotten. Die to evacuate survivors, And somebody get me a line to the Krell commander. Her communications officer looked surprised. Captain, you want to talk to them? Linda's smile was cold and hard. I want to give them one chance to surrender. Just one chance. After that, we are going to show them why you should never attack the friends of a Deathworld species. Back in the council chamber, the ambassadors watched the human fleet approach. Some were afraid, some were impressed. But all of them realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. Humanity had shown that they were not content to sit back and watch evil happen. They had shown that they would fight for what they believed in, no matter what the cost. And for the first time in a very long time, the Galactic Council had to ask itself a hard question. Were their rules and procedures more important than doing what was right? Jake opened a communication channel to all the ships. This is Commander Morrison. 3 hours ago, our friends called for help. Right now, they are dying. The Krell think they can attack innocent people and nothing will happen. Today, we are going to teach them a lesson. Today, we show them what happens when you hurt someone that humanity cares about. All ships, set your course for Kepler 442b, maximum speed. We are not coming home until every Lyrian is safe, or every one of us is dead trying. The fleet jumped into hyperspace. They left trails of light behind them like shooting stars. And on every ship, humans prepared for battle. They checked their weapons. They put on their armor. They said goodbye to loved ones, knowing they might never see them again. But not one person complained. Not one person turned back. Because someone had called for help, and humans always answered that call.